Hey buddies, PotatoMcWhiskey here. I did a video about a year ago called 4 Problems I Have with Civ 6 After 1000 Hours. And since then, I've put another 1000 hours into the game, and I wanted to give my thoughts and feedback about that initial video, as well as some new thoughts I have about the game. With the rumours of an upcoming third expansion or DLC in the works, I thought now would be a good time as well to release this video, since I made my first video shortly before the release of Gathering Storm, and it might give the developers some time to address the concerns, or potentially vindicate them if they've already accounted for them. If you want to see the original video, there will be a link in the description as well in the top right hand corner. Also, like 80% of the people watching this video aren't subscribed to my channel. I hate asking for it, but click the like button and click the subscribe button, all that jazz. In the original video, the 4 big complaints I laid out were that production is too important and too scarce, specialist slots are not worth it, and great profit points are useless after you found a religion. And then the final one was that late game buildings cost too much and provide too little. Since I made that video, there have been a number of changes to the game that basically directly address all of those problems that I originally outlined. There were numerous changes to how production works, industrial zones were changed massively, and power was implemented alongside stuff like lumber mills unlocking earlier in the tech tree that basically eliminated all of my complaints about the scarcity of production. They also significantly buffed specialists and tier 3 buildings with the power systems, and tier 3 buildings now upgrade the yields on specialists. Great profit points and great people points in general now convert into extra faith if there's no great profits left, or a great person of the category of the great person point that you're generating. Typically it's going to be great profits in an average game. And also with the implementation of the power system, as well as the production cost changes to tier 3 buildings, and tier 3 buildings getting a lot of buffs, and just generally buildings being buffed, everything is a lot more valuable and a little bit cheaper. So you could pretty much say that every complaint that I had about the game was directly addressed by the developers in one patch or another. And I want to give them huge props for that. Not only did they address my concerns and the concerns of the community, they did it using better solutions than I was able to come up with. I actually preferred their solutions to the ones that I proposed. So I have to say I'm super happy with the state of the game with respect to the original list of grievances that I put forward. With that said, the last year has been somewhat turbulent with the recent changes, so I thought I'd go over the bugs and exploits that need to be addressed the most, since they have the biggest impact out of all the exploits that I know. The 4 biggest exploits that I'd like to see fixed are in no particular order. The Pantheon Exploit, we've seen videos on this from big YouTubers like the Spiffing Brit that allows you to stack up absurd amounts of bonuses. So I'd like to see that fixed. You can get infinite settlers, thousands of holy site adjacency, and all manner of bonuses from this one. So it's quite literally game breaking. We've also got the District Duplication exploit that I haven't yet made a video on, but basically allows you to get to multiple copies of a district. So I'd like to see it get fixed as well. A couple of smaller exploits that I'm going to mention are the Government Reset exploit that allows you to reset your government for free, and the Great General Unit Upgrade bug that allows you to keep the movement speed and combat strength on your units permanently when you upgrade them in range of a Great General. I'd like to see all of these exploits fixed. There's also another small exploit whereby siege units can move and attack if they have more than 2 movement speed that I'd like to see either fixed or have the developers embrace the bug as part of the design and change the final promotion for siege units to something that's actually useful, like +1 movement speed. I prefer the latter, but I do think it should be addressed either way. Either, embrace the bug or fix the bug. So with the exploits out of the way, I think we can all agree that exploits are something that we'd like to see get fixed. I'd like to talk about some of the smaller stuff in the game. I definitely feel like the game is in a really good place from a gameplay and design aspect, but I still have a few wiggly little criticisms about it. I do want to acknowledge the fact that my criticisms are pretty small and fiddly really speaks to the great job supporting the game that Firaxis and 2K have done. Huge shout out to them for making the game as good as it is today. Sometimes I worry that I'm being a little bit too critical in videos like this, so I want to acknowledge their hard work. My first complaint is about specialists again. Specialists are in a much better place than they used to be, but I think their potential really hasn't been tapped yet. I'd like to see a couple of small changes for specialists. I think right now, there's a lack of civic cards that interact with specialists. I think it would be really cool if there was a wild card or economic policy card that gave specialists +1 food yield, or maybe with a late game card it gives them +1 food in production. I think it would be a nice little change that would make working specialist tiles a little bit more valuable compared to the current game. Another change I'd like to see is Monarchy changed from housing from walls as their legacy bonus to maybe being +1 specialist yields. I think these small changes would really open up specialist-oriented strategies without making them crazy overpowered. These are just ideas, I'm not particularly attached to them, but I'd like to see something in this vein. I'd like to see specialists just get buffed a little bit more to bring them into prominence. Specialist-based economies in Civ 5 are one of my favorite ways to play, and I'd like to see something like that make a comeback in Civ 6. My second complaint is about amenities. I feel like amenities are a really cool system that don't really have a big impact on the game. I can effectively ignore amenities for the majority of my game and it won't affect me. It would be way more interesting if the effects of amenities were more pronounced and scaled with a number of positive amenities in your cities. They're not in a terrible place. I actually think the system is in a great place when it comes to having negative amenities, but I'd like to see another level of rewards for having a city with really high amenities beyond ecstatic, considering how difficult it can be to get those high amenity numbers in a large empire. My third complaint is that some of the buildings in the game are still pretty boring. I think the developers have done an amazing job making a lot of the different buildings have interesting effects tied to them. Holy site buildings dictate which units you can recruit and sometimes give them special effects like the mosque building. Encampment buildings give you access to new units and provide buffs to them. Harbour buildings completely change the structure of your economy for coastal cities. Industrial zones provide a really interesting and satisfying game experience for maximizing adjacency, power, and regional effects. Entertainment and water park districts provide a similar regional effect decision experience. Theatre squares given a completely entire great work mini game to interact with. The problem, though, is that a lot of the buildings still in the game are kind of boring. Right? Take the commercial hub, for example. Markets give you an extra trade route. That's an interesting gameplay interaction. Banks give you extra money. That's not very interesting. Stock exchanges give you extra money and can be powered for extra money. These buildings are pretty boring when you compare them to some of the others. I'd like to see markets maybe give extra yields to trade routes passing over them. Maybe banks also get an interesting interaction, like generating interest or making purchasing in the city cheaper by a small amount. And stock exchanges could generate more gold the more cities are in range of them, or tie their economic benefits to some sort of diplomatic stance, like open borders, or friendships, or bonus money at peace. It doesn't have to be a huge change, just some small little bonus that will incentivize me to build the building beyond the innate yield to make that decision just a little bit more situational and a little bit more interesting. Campus buildings are pretty guilty of this problem as well, but they're already super powerful, so I'm kind of okay with them being a little bit more boring, but if there was some kind of interaction with them, I would love it too. Arenas are kind of boring because they're a bit one-dimensional. Sewers are really boring, mainly because they're just expensive and worse versions of the aqueduct or granary. Workshops are really boring as well, and I'd like to see them given some sort of interesting interaction. I don't think there's that many uninteresting buildings left in the game, and I'd love to see some of the final little boring buildings get some new interactions. This complaint also applies to some of the boring unique buildings, like the Aztec unique arena. It isn't super interesting, and I'd like to see it get a change or two. Most of the unique buildings in the game are actually really interesting, but the Aztec arena stands out as one of the least interesting unique versions of the least interesting building in the game. The fourth complaint that I have is easily the hardest to solve. And that is that I would like to see more rewards for truly specializing a city. I'd like to see long-term bonuses that shape the fate of your civilization permanently. And I'd like to see more ways for cities to interact with each other. For example, sending food or production from one city to another. Right now, you can kind of, send production to another city by sending a builder from one city, but I'd like to see something a little bit more interesting, like being able to send food between cities. Maybe you settle a city in the desert and it doesn't have really good food, but you have this other city on a really productive food floodplains, so you send a bit of food to your desert city and now both cities are stronger or whatever. With regards to specializing cities, I just don't think it feels very rewarding, and it kind of feels like building a bunch of jack of all trades cities works better than specializing your cities in one particular direction. I don't know how they would address this, but I'd like to see things move in that sort of a direction, like make specializing your cities more rewarding, give the player some kind of long-term bonus to build into. Now, I think Wonders do a really good job of kind of slotting into that long-term bonus idea, but I'd like to see just a little bit more kind of zoomed out abstract, maybe at the end of an era. Let's say you settled a couple of coastal cities. Maybe at the end of the era, you get to choose, you get a production discount on your harbors because you settled a bunch of coastal cities, or because you also founded a religion, you can choose to get a bonus on your shrine, and you have to kind of make a decision between a few different bonuses based on what you actually achieved in the era previous. I think that would be a really cool gameplay system that I'd like to see. It doesn't have to exactly look like that, but that's kind of the sort of thing that I'm looking for. I want something to get bonuses based on what I did, essentially. That's pretty much it. Those are my 4 complaints. I kind of compressed those last 3 complaints into a single complaint, but that's mainly because it's a really difficult one to actually address, and it might not even belong or fit in the game from a design aspect. But it's just kind of like, if I were to, you know, if someone were to ask me, what would you like to implement into the game? It would be those three things. More rewards for specializing in city, long-term bonuses that shape the fate of your civilization permanently, and more ways for cities to interact with each other and to cooperate on projects. That's pretty much it for this video. I'm excited to see if any of my thoughts have been addressed by the developers in the rumored third expansion, which I really need to hammer the point on. At this point, it's only rumored. It could simply be a small DLC or a regular update patch, but we have no concrete information at this point aside from a small, nameless set of achievements being added to Civ 6 on Steam. I've always kind of maintained that there would be another patch or another expansion, and so I really hope there is, and I'm really looking forward to it because I love this game and I really want to see more of it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and everything else, and give me your thoughts on the game and what you'd like to see change in the comment section. I love you all very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.